Hello and welcome, dear listener, wherever you were through the podcast of Depth, in which we will dive together through the depth of our universe to discover it and get to know it closely. So, let's take a deep breath and stop at the first depth of our travels. I will dive you first into the closest depth within you, and if you think about it and strive hard to discover it, you will find that you have reached your depth and the depth for yourself, the greatest thing you own. And if you don't know anything about it, how can you dive deeper away from you? Oh man, do not be deceived by your shape and small size, and think that you are not capable of anything, but be deceived by the great things you carry inside you. And always remember that you can face all the difficulties and discover every unknown in this life. And the most of these unknown difficulties that must be faced are the self. Although it represents you, it's one of the most important unknowns of the life that is difficult to fully know. The more you think that you have reached the bottom, then you find that you are far from it. At the beginning of the way to the bottom, you should start by asking yourself these questions. What is my true self? Where is it? How do I reach her? What is the starting point? Who am I? If you start with it, know that you are walking in the right way to reach your depth, and you will grab the end of the thread that will connect you to yourself. Now, before I begin, I want you to close your eyes and leave the world behind you and sail with me in the sea of the imagination a little, and imagine that you are preparing to dive to your depths. Assume that yourself is made up of layers, all of which influence the formation of your personality. First, the outer layer. It's the visible layer that expresses us through our actions, and it's like a machine that receives its order in advance from our unconscious mind as a result of the accumulation that we experienced before. For example, have you ever done something and then ask yourself, why did I do this? This question is not a question of regret, but astonishment and amazement, and it tells us that we did without feeling from you because the unconscious mind is the one who gave its order. After all, it has lived something similar before. We can say that this layer affects 10% of yourself because it's just a mirror of what is inside you only, but is subject to change and break with simple things. Second, the friends layer. Here I don't mean what you have from friends, but rather their influence on yourself. Don't fabricate arguments and opinions that because their influence represents 20% of the influences on the self. So don't say, how is that possible? Or, it's not true, friends cannot influence me. If you say that, then it seems that you haven't heard what is said. The one who teethed with the people for 40 days has become one of them. All of this indicates us that the friend has a great influence that we may not feel, except that it changes us, either for the best or the worst. So, review and verify your friendship, and see how it affects you, and try as much as possible not to succumb to their influence and reduce it. And always remember, the Prophet Muhammad said, may God's prayer and peace upon him, a person on the religion of his friend. So, let one of you see who is in breach of it. Third, the society layer, the environment in which we lived in, and more precisely, the people around us. As this nature reaches 25% on ourselves, as it is specific, what do you think? That proposed solution exists in the concept of what you want to be, accepted and carried forward in the future, passing as a strange feeling in every time. Because you act differently from yourself. You act as someone else. You will feel inferior because you hide your true self and bury it out of sight. Finally, we have childhood layer, the layer on which we rely heavily, representing 35% of it, as it's the most important stage of life, through which we acquired everything that made us who we are now, and in it, we spent our first moments of most of them. And at this stage, the child begins to learn and try to understand the life around him, and that about imitating others, specifically from the parents. So, every movement and every word that the child stores in his subconscious mind for later use. In fact, we can liken the child to an empty container, and you as a parent responsible for filling it, and you have freedom in that. Or it's likened to a machine that you can program with whatever programming commands to you like. In both cases, it will come out to the world as it has been backed and programmed, and the environment of the upbringing from which the child comes out is important. The good upbringing equals a strong and important personality, and the bad upbringing equals a weak and marginalized personality. So, look at your childhood, how you passed and not evaded from them, or moving away from comforting them. The confrontation always makes a person stronger and stronger in front of life's difficulties. Be aware that your past shapes your present, and your present, your future, will be all interconnected times. You cannot turn a blind eye or exclude one of them. This will make you lost, and you will be in an incomplete circle of life. In the end, this exploration trip may seem very easy to you, but when the time comes to implement you will find how it's very hard and difficult to do. Words are easier than actions, and if the matter stops when saying all people would live in carefree life and not face any difficulties, you have to constantly change yourself. And of course, I mean positive and beneficial change, and keep your mind in constant knowledge and your soul fully prepared to accept any beneficial change. As changing every period is a beautiful thing that renews your spiritual and psychological energy and makes you love life more. Good times with happiness and comfort.